podcast for those who suffer, which is everyone.
It's a space where we can speak honestly about what it feels like to be in desolate places without losing hope.
Welcome to In the Thicket. Hello, everybody.
Good morning.
Oh, that was
hi.
Nice song. Hi.
I almost said good morning.
I know, we're trying to get away from the good morning thing, but it's hard because we record in the mornings and it's like, you're feeling happy. It's morning, whatever.
I feel like we can say good morning. I know I was the one that was like, we should not do this. But it's kind of
That's so fun. I said good hi instead because
good hi.
I definitely said like hi morning. How are you?
I love all of it. I think good hi is my next. Maybe that's going to be our podcast like intro. Good hi, hello.
Good hi.
So we are so excited because today we have a very special guest, Ignatius Ashali. Hi, Ignatius.
Hi, Rachel.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm really glad to be here. I've been looking forward to this, actually.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, my internet seems to be a little bit moody today. So
Right.
if I'm cutting in and out, hopefully that can be fixed in post.
Yes.
Nice. We'll just
We will do our
screenshot
best.
all the times where you're frozen like this, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and just
That's what
put
they
them
do
on
to me.
Instagram.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you can post it like a picture of Rachel at the
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
on your Instagram.
You know what? Everyone else on this podcast, we need one of those for everybody on this podcast. I feel like I'm bearing a lot of the weight of the
Right.
picture.
Of the awkward pictureness.
Yeah. We need to balance out the scales here. So
Okay, well, I think that's a good challenge.
I also have like one time I left my phone somewhere. I think I went to the washroom and Erin was near my phone and she took a bunch of selfies of herself that were like, it was, so they're
Gold.
they're gold. I should see if I still have
Okay.
those.
Yeah.
I'm liking where this conversation is heading. Thanks, Ignatius.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't remember
Good tip.
those, so that would
You
be
don't
good.
remember those?
No,
Oh, good.
no. Okay, that's good. So then I'll
That's
scroll
payback.
through your Facebook and then see if I can find a good one. Well, I guess unless you post awkward pictures of yourself on Facebook,
Yeah, don't
Who, me?
that won't work. But yeah,
That's generally not the direction people go with.
yeah, that's usually true. Yeah.
So I just, how is everybody doing? Like, how is our week? How are we feeling? It's November, almost December right now. I'm recording this,
Yeah.
which is crazy.
I'm super pumped because I got a new computer, which is so exciting because my old computer was like not cutting it. It was just like, it was so slow, Anyways, it was so funny though, because I walked into Best Buy to ask, like, to get a new computer, and I totally sounded like I knew what I was talking about because one of the like students at Newman, I've been like, okay, what do I need? What are the specs that are important? Anyway, so I walked in, I'm like, oh yes. So I need something that's definitely SSD, at least 256. Anyways. And then he asked me a question. I was like,
I don't know.
What language are you speaking?
He like called your bluff. It's like when
Wasn't part of the script.
that's right.
go to a foreign country and you have the accent down and you have like these 3 lines in the other language that
Totally.
you can actually say and you say
Yeah.
them and the person's like, oh, you speak Spanish. And then you're like,
Yeah.
nope. That's
what happens to me when I try to speak French. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fun. Yeah. So I'm excited about that. But I'm also I'm excited to talk to you, Ashali. Ignatius. My brain. Because you're in Nova Scotia right now, which is exciting because I used to live in Yarmouth and I went to Dal. And you're at Dal, so yeah,
Wow.
exciting. I know I live right across
Wow.
the street from the Tupper building. And yeah, so you're in all
Wow.
my familiar places, which is super fun.
That's so great. I've been to Nova Scotia once, but it was we were on our way I was on a road trip with some friends from Ottawa to PEI. And so we spent some time in New Brunswick, and then we wanted to just say that we'd been to Nova Scotia. So we basically, on our way to go cross the bridge into PEI, we looked on the map and to be like, okay, where's the border of Nova Scotia? Where can we just like skirt over the border? So we did that. We ended up in some like field on a dirt road, and we almost got stuck in like mud because we wasn't
my gosh.
the road. But then we're like, okay, great. We've been to Nova Scotia. And then we kept going.
Oh, I'm sad for you. You missed the glory. You missed the glory.
I
that
know
is Nova
someday.
Nova Scotia.
We'll go,
It's actually
man.
very beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. It's like my favorite place in the world is the Yarmouth Lighthouse, the Cape Horseshoe Lighthouse. If you have a chance, you got to go there, Ignatius, because it's basically like, I mean, Peggy's Cove, beautiful lighthouse, whatever, except for there's a billion tourists. But then the Yarmouth Lighthouse is like forlorn and mystical. And it's like you're on the edge of nowhere. It's so beautiful.
Aaron, I feel like when you're talking about Nova Scotia, there's a little hint of your East Coast lilt just kind of sneaking in
really?
there. Just a little bit,
Totally.
you know? It's
You're
good.
going to go far in the car. Yarmouth, you're going to go far in the car to the bar. Yeah.
Great.
I've heard a lot of things about the Yarmouth Lighthouse, actually. So that's actually definitely on my list of places to go while I'm here. Although,
Sweet.
one thing that was cool is that when I went to Peggy's Cove, obviously there is no tourism in Nova
Right.
Scotia right now.
Right.
So when I went there, it was actually pretty empty. So it was really nice.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. You're in
Yeah.
the bubble.
So, Ignatius, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself? Why are you in Nova Scotia right now? What are you doing?
Sure.
Who is Ignatius?
Or Ashali, as some people like to call it.
So, hi everybody. My name is Ignatius. I'm 22. I just graduated from McMaster University, last semester, almost 2 semesters ago now, and that's actually where I had the pleasure of working with Rachel for around a year when she was the campus minister there. So after I graduated, I decided to pursue a missionary vocation with Catholic Christian Outreach. And I got placed at Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So I moved there in September of this year, and I've been working basically on campus. We've had some in-person things. Most of our things have been online, but it's been a really, really great opportunity, I think, to be able to be here and to experience what it's like to work in ministry in this way, and then just to experience also like East Coast life, because it's very different. It's very different, and I really love it here, actually.
That's
That's so
awesome.
great.
Sweet.
Are you from Hamilton originally then? Like Toronto area?
So I was born in Jakarta, in Indonesia, and then my family moved to Mississauga in 2001.
Okay.
So we stayed there for about 10 or 11 years, and then we moved to this little place called Stony Creek, which is basically Hamilton. And my family still lives there, and I have moved to Halifax.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because I'm imagining like Toronto, Hamilton, the contrast between that and the East Coast is like it's different.
Totally.
Significant.
Yeah.
It's significant.
100%.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Even the airport. I was flying in one time for a conference and I was like, oh, I'm going to get in late. No big deal. I'll just take us something. And I'm like, nope, the airport is in the middle of nowhere and there's no cabs that are operating after 11
boy.
p.m. So I'm going to sleep at the airport.
All right.
Like it's so different here. There's not even Uber here yet.
Right.
In Nova
Wow.
Scotia.
Okay.
Yeah. Nova Scotia actually doesn't even have Uber yet. So
That's
it's
Did you just hitchhike then? Like,
things move slower.
You just ask George on the corner if he can give you a lift down to the city. It's no big deal.
That's actually
Wow,
not
I'm learning
entirely
so
inaccurate.
much right now. That's awesome.
Right? Totally. Love it.
One thing that I've been realizing as I come here is that there's a stereotype of Canadians being like super nice. And I feel like that must have originated from the East Coast.
Aw, that's nice.
True.
shout out to
Everyone
East
here is
Coasters.
just so nice. I've never seen anything like it.
Oh, that's so cool. Shout out East Coasters. Good rep in here. But yeah, so that's what you're doing out in Nova Scotia, which is fantastic. But we're so excited to have you on our podcast because when you and I got to work together, I think we got to work very closely. Ignatius is the president of the student club, basically at MAC, the Catholic Student Club, MACSA. And and so we did a lot of ministry together, and ministry, involves ups and downs, lots of challenges. And I really got to know Ignatius in that. He, for a 22-year-old person, he's got a lot of experience in the spiritual life and ups and downs of that. So we wanted to just talk to you about, suffering in the ordinary and what you've learned. So what are your experiences of suffering? Like what has life brought you so far in the way of suffering?
So a lot of my experiences of suffering have really been in the everyday things that I think most people go through, right? So a lot of things like things to do with relationship, things to do with like moving to a new place and seeing what it's like for you there. And when I think about a moment of my life where there was really a season of great like difficulty and challenge, I kind of have to think back to when I was still in high school. I mentioned that my parents moved to Mississauga. My family moved to Mississauga from Jakarta in like 2001. So I would have been 3 years old, and we spent like 10, 11 years there, right? And as somebody growing up, going through just like my childhood in that space, there was a really formative time spent in that city. It was a really formative time, and you start to make friends, you start to develop relationships, and you start to really get connected with people that are there. And then all of a sudden, when I was 14, 15, we decided to move to a new city. So I went to a new school, and with that came a lot of difficulties, came a lot of challenges that you would expect that to come with, right? So I enrolled into high school when I was 15, so I would have been in like grade 10 at that point, and I quickly realized that is probably one of the worst times to
Totally.
be at a new school,
Yeah.
because when you're in grade 9, then it's like for everyone it's their first year in this new environment, so it's easy to like form new groups, form new friendships, but a year after that, those are pretty much solidified, and it's really hard to break into. Yeah. And especially for me, because I think that was the moment in my life when I was a very different person than I am now. And I actually had a lot of difficulty in social situations. I had a lot of challenges with cultivating friendships. I had a lot of challenges with also just being secure in myself. And I think a lot of that had to do with just a way that I was, and my experiences that I had up until that moment just weren't conducive to building up those things in me. So that year of my life when I was 15, so 7 years ago now, was very challenging, right? There was a lot of suffering, there was a lot of pain, just in having to spend most of that year in a school feeling alone. Right? There's a very deep sense of loneliness, a very deep sense of suffering, of pain that accompanied that. And throughout the year, I would find myself doing things, and it's like, wow, this is actually kind of sad that that there's no one here. So that was definitely a moment for me. Like that season of my life was quite challenging, but what I kind of came to realize, especially as I started to grow older, as I started to really step into my faith more, was how the Lord had used that moment, had used that time to grow me as a person, and to like give me gifts in even that time of suffering, which I wouldn't realize were gifts until later on. For example, I mentioned that at that time of my life, I was not too good in social situations. I wasn't very socially like equipped. And I think that year really forced me to gain that knowledge, to gain the tools to actually talk to people, to actually make new friends. And that proved itself, as I moved on, grade 11, grade 12, those skills started to make themselves known. Those skills started to make themselves actually used. And after I experienced my moment of deep conversion, at the end of my first year of university, I realized, wow, the Lord was like really active here.
It's interesting even that you share that, because that, like, my dad was in the RCMP, so we moved all across Canada, lots of places. And I think that nobody who knows me now would ever believe that I was very shy as a child.
Wow.
Like, it's impossible to believe, I think. But exactly like you said, like, there's something really beautiful that the Lord can bring out of these, like, because they're not like major, life-changing like catastrophes or anything like that, but just there's just even these kind of like long spanning things that it's like so slowly he just brings out this good and this good and this good and this good. Because I found that as well. Like at some point I was like, well, I'm going to eat my lunch in the bathroom alone and that's disgusting, or I'm going to learn how to make friends, and trust that people might like me and want to be around me at some point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I resonated as well. Even, I mean, different situation, but just thinking back on my own teenage years, and when you're saying, yeah, like I wasn't super good at like social situations, I was like, yeah, that's me. That was like I was super awkward. And maybe everyone, maybe not everyone, but maybe a lot of people I think feel that way, where it's just like, if you're not quite sure how to break in with a certain group, or you're innocent, you're just not quite sure how, like, how does it work here? How does, then that can be really, really isolating. And you start to feel like, well, something's wrong with me. What's wrong with me? So I liked what you said too. Like, yeah, I just, that the situations that you'd been in so far hadn't taught you those skills. But then that year, that very being alone, it forced you to kind of be like, all right, well, I'm going to learn how to kind of, break in or whatever it is. So it's, yeah, it's those very times where you feel the most alone or the most awkward or whatever it is. That's where the growth might actually be happening. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's really, that's good.
And honestly, fast forward to like now, this season of your life, or even your last year of university, when I started in campus ministry, I didn't know anyone, and Ignatius was sort of like literally like he sort of took me under his wing as a student, was like, these are all the things and all the people, and you were so good at that. And I was so grateful because of you, I kind of got into the swing of things so much faster than if you hadn't been around, because you took on that load of kind of showing me the ropes, which is so different. You know what I mean? Like now you're playing a role, and then you learned so much in order that you could play this role of actually connecting others, people together, which is so cool, which is something that God has done in your life.
Yeah.
And I've experienced
Do you find that you have a certain like sensitivity to the new kids, or the like the new people, or that maybe the outsiders, and maybe it sounds like maybe you have this bit of a knowledge of how to draw people in. Do you think that that's something that developed out of that time?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely I do. I think that having those experiences, especially like being that guy, right? Being that one who like didn't fit in, like that definitely helped to tune me more to witnessing that in others, and to seeing that happen for other people. And I think there are times in my life when it's more pronounced and more at times when it isn't. But what you're describing, like this disposition, this heart for the lost, this heart for those who aren't known, is something that's definitely been built up in me through my experiences. And I think that that's exactly what it is, which really helps me to really love this idea of working in like on campus, of working campus ministries, because that's really a big part of it, right? Is in seeking out those who don't feel like they belong, and letting them know, hey, you do, you're a beloved child of God, and this is where you can fit in.
It's amazing. It's amazing to me, like just in retrospect, right? Like in looking back on your life, or in like seeing what the Lord is doing in you now, or how he's using you now, or like, I think all of us can kind of do that, where you, like, little did you know that when you were in high school, that these experiences that you were having and the suffering that you were experiencing and the isolation and whatever would be weaved together in something that's so beautiful now, that's both for you and for other people, right? So like that the Lord working in your life has shown you his faithfulness, or that it's made it easier for you to connect with other people, or giving you those skills or things like that. But also then for the people whose life, like now you're working with university students and having a huge impact on helping people to know Jesus Christ and to enter into all eternity for all eternity with the Father. Like you are participating in somebody else's salvation, and that's linked to like what happened to you in high school, like that the Lord is so good and has this bigger picture of everything.
Yeah, totally. And one thing that I do find is also just like how this is like a consistent theme in my life is how the Lord will take these moments of like disconnectedness, these moments of what I'm feeling like removed from community, and then transform that into something that's so much greater than what I could have ever done. Because I actually had a similar experience throughout my like first year in university even, where I was again like entering into a new place, going into a new thing, and for that year I was actually had the luxury of being able to live on the like on campus residences, and in that time it was I had a sense of I'm on campus, I'm on residence, so that means I can get involved, right? Well, it didn't quite work out that way for one reason or another, and I actually found very similar challenges with that of being in a new place. Is that while I had friends, I didn't have any that I could consider to be like somebody that I could rely on, somebody that I could count on. And I just remember that year, so this is like 2017, was just something that I desired so much. That was somebody that I could rely on, someone that I could count on. And for me, in terms of my spirituality, this is also probably one of the lowest points for me in my spiritual life, right? Because think about it. I'm somebody who just came out of high school. I'm entering into my first university. I'm away from my parents for the first time. Because as somebody who is, of course, like born and baptized Catholic, your faith easily becomes something you take for granted. So as somebody who's like stepping into like living on his own for the first time, it's attractive to be like, like let's try not doing this and see what happens. And it's
right.
and it's like obvious that it was a simple of my faith is something that was given to me, that was almost like that was I don't want to say it was forced on me, but I never had the opportunity to like choose it for myself. Basically, so I didn't really see or understand what there was to gain from it, and yet I saw it as there being something to lose, right? Because there is a certain stigma associated with being Catholic. So coming to the realization of that, I kind of stepped away. I kind of like distanced myself from it a little bit in that first year, and a lot of these fears come from a lot of this actually come from the fear of social ostracization, which I mentioned was big for me in high school, right? Being ostracized socially, being exiled socially, like that's where these fears came from. But I find our Lord is very, very funny. I find our God has a very real sense of humor. And and as I approached the end of my first year in school, I began to realize that, you know what, I'm not actually doing too hot socially. I don't actually have that many close connections. I don't actually have that many people that I can call like my friends. So I was like, let me see if I can figure this out. Because again, I entered into a season of loneliness, a season of pain, into a season where it was like every day was spent waiting for the next day to come. And I don't know if you guys have ever experienced anything like that, but it's just like, it's so monotonous and it's so like stale, where it's just, you're just like wasting. If you're like, you're wasting away, you just like do the work for the day, and then you spend the rest of the day binging whatever Netflix show you happen to be binging at the time, and then the next day comes and it repeats and it repeats and it repeats, and it's just the same thing over and over.
Yeah.
So this was challenging, and it was really, really difficult, and there was this deep emptiness that I felt at that time. So I was trying to figure out, like, how do I get out of this? How do I pull myself out of this? And thankfully for me, my brother was involved with, Rachel mentioned the name before, with Maxa, with the Catholic Club in McMaster, because, my brother is like that. So, and throughout the year, he's been inviting me to come to events. He's been inviting me to come to this or that. And I think I went for the first couple of times in September, but then after that, I'm like, not for me type thing.
Right.
But all of a sudden I'm put in this position where it's like, I have nothing. So I realized that, maybe I should go back. Maybe there's something here. Maybe there's like, like if nothing else, just for the people that I could meet through this Catholic club. Right. So I did that. And then, like, as you guys, as many of our listeners are probably aware, when you get involved with Catholic groups, when you make Catholic friends, you're going to get invited probably to some kind of retreat, or you're probably going to get invited to some kind of conference that somebody is organizing somewhere. So luckily, I was actually able to go to something like that, and it was retreat hosted by the Eastern Canada Chinese Catholic Living Camp, which I'm pretty sure actually many of us are probably familiar with. or GT, and it was really there where the Lord, where I came to an encounter with Christ, where I came to an encounter with Jesus. And what was really funny was that after that retreat, it was in a moment of confession where I experienced like the love that Christ had for me personally. When you experience something like that, like nothing can be the same, because it's like, wow, God, not only are you real, but you love me. So everything changed after that. And this is where I find the Lord's humor really came in, because the reason why I distanced myself from my faith in my first was because I was afraid of like social exile. And yet it was only after I fully embraced my faith that the Lord gave me the best friend I've ever had. As the Lord gave me the best relationships, the most fruitful and fulfilling people in my life. It was a complete subversion of my expectations.
Right.
Can I ask, like, what was it like for you experiencing suffering after that point? Like, was there other times where you felt kind of alone or that same kind of pattern? But then what was the difference? Like, what's the difference been from, high school, first year university to after that with life in Christ?
Yeah, I mean, I think after that experience, after I realized like how the Lord is working in here, it's like a big difference has just been in the way that I approach these and how I approach those times in my life, and how I approach suffering in general is just has just like changed so dramatically, because I kind of started to realize that the Lord really yells in my suffering. That we say it like while he may whisper or in your joys or speak to you in your moments of consolation, I find he's particularly loud and particularly present in the moments of creative suffering. And it's an unfortunate reality in some ways, but in some ways it's also helps to deepen how you embrace your suffering. It really helps to deepen how you enter into suffering, because then suffering stops becoming fully about why is this happening to me, but part of it becomes, Lord, what are you trying to say to me through this? Lord, what are you trying to speak to me in this?
Have you found, so you're talking about the fear of ostracization, is that the right word? Being ostracized? And so there, like, often I find that there's so much fear when we approach stuff, and we had a whole episode about this, like fear and suffering, how have you found, because you've had these experiences of transformation where God has taken a tough experience and just like transformed it for you. So kind of like along the lines of what Aaron was saying, when you kind of are at the precipice of something difficult or a challenge and something is going to be painful, is there a difference in how you approach that in terms of your fear? Like, are you as afraid as you, because I'm definitely afraid of suffering in some ways, you know what I mean? Like, has it impacted that fear at all?
Yeah. I'm definitely still afraid of suffering. I definitely still fear it, and I try to avoid it. And I think that's just a natural human response to something like that.
Yeah.
So of course that'll happen. But I find that one thing that I have done in the past now is at least if I see it coming, or if I know it, or if I'm expecting something difficult to happen, is that I can almost like prepare myself for it. I can prepare myself to be in a place afterwards where I can come running into the arms of the Father, where I can like go to him immediately and just sit in his presence. And Rachel, I actually have an experience with you of when this happened around this time last year, if you remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, where I just knew something was coming. So I asked Rachel, like, hey, can I have the keys to the church or something, or can I go into the church at this time? And then it's turned out to work out well because it was open during the time when I needed it, and like what I expected to happen happened, and I was just able to immediately come running into my Father's house, and to grieve. Really is to grieve there, and I think that was actually a very healthy way of approaching that moment.
Yeah, that was a witness to me in some ways. Like Ignatius he knew, like, he's alluding to something hard was going to happen. And then he like set up his time to like literally go straight to the Lord after that happened so that he could just be with the Lord in that. And I was thinking that is just so, because God wants to be there for us in those moments, and we should know that always. Like, and so when we approach suffering, we should know that we're not alone and that we don't have to face it alone. I think that's such a powerful thing that we forget, even as Christians, even as practicing Catholics. Like, we can really forget that. You can really feel like you are really alone in your suffering, but you're not,
Yeah, it's kind of like a lot of times you think about how suffering affects people, and you can kind of see that it sends people one way or the other, right? Like, it sends people into kind of like bitterness, despair, like all of those kind of things, or it will push people like closer to God, or to find meaning in that suffering, or to something like that. And sometimes we can think like maybe it's people who don't have a relationship with God or with Christ or whatever, who would kind of go towards the despair and stuff. But I think that we can still all do that. Like, even having a relationship with Christ is like, it's like we almost have to plan for our worst possible action in suffering, like if we know we're going to encounter something or whatever. Like, I think that's so beautiful, is being to set it up and to trust actually that I can't trust myself. Like, the saints talk about that a lot, right? About like, that we have to distrust ourselves in some ways because we're broken and we're sinful, and we're, we have to realize that those things are going to affect us in our lives. So to be able to, like, I love that idea anyways, of being able to kind of plan for those times of like ordinary suffering or extraordinary suffering. Like, what am I going to do in those times?
Yeah, that's beautiful. And like, kind of, it's just very practical, okay, this thing that I'm happening on Tuesday is going to be really hard. I hope so nothing happens hard on Tuesday. But so then just pulling, then you're, scheduling that in. All right, I'm going to stop in at a church after, or, sometimes we might need that to experience. Sometimes some of us know that we're going to need to experience the love of God through another human person. So setting up a conversation, be like, hey, this tough thing might be happening or is happening on this day. Can we talk later? And setting that up, and then scheduling time for prayer too. Just like it's, I think it comes down to like knowing ourselves, right? Like, no, suffering is going to be inevitable, but what has been helpful for me, and what can I do so that I don't just despair and feel, totally lost after, right? But have a little bit of a plan too, It's just a really good practical thing,
Yeah. I also think it's such a relief, like, kind of, that this, we've talked about this before, but just the same idea that it's not all on me. Like, I don't have to carry this burden on my own. Like, I really don't, that for me is just a relief, just to know that, and to live my life that way.
Yeah. Like, looking at even like the virtues, right? Like, I know when you were talking to Ignatius about kind of what we were going to talk about during this conversation and stuff, the theme of courage came up, like courage in the ordinary, and if you look at courage, the virtue of courage is the mean between the two vices of foolhardiness and cowardice. So like, courage does not mean just sucking it up and, biting the bullet, and that's foolhardiness, because that's not actually respecting the reality of who we are. And then cowardice is like the running away from it and the not dealing with it. And then, so like, it's interesting to think about, like, courage, actually what that really looks like for us when we're facing those things. What is that? Like, what do you find? How do you find that works kind of in your life, Ignatius?
I think that especially when you like lay out that dichotomy there between foolhardiness and cowardice, I think courage almost exists at some intersection of the two, where it's not just like running headfirst into something, and also not running away from it, but to kind of understand what's happening, kind of understand like why it's like it for me, it resonates a lot with just like emotional intelligence and like personal and like a self-understanding, where it's like, okay, why am I feeling this way? It's like you're in this moment of where you're suffering. Maybe it's something really hard. It's like, like, why is this hard for me? And then understanding, and then like just like speaking truth into that. It's like, this is hard because it is, like, this is hard because I really cared about that person, or this is hard because I really miss those people. And having courage isn't to run away from it, and isn't to just like suck it up and get over it, but to give yourself time to grieve, because that's healthy and that's important.
Yeah.
Give yourself time to grieve for give yourself time to grieve for that.
Yeah.
Seeing grounded in reality, really.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing. Like, this was partly why we thought this was an important topic to talk about, is because there's like suffering that happens in the daily, like the little hills and valleys, or the things that are kind of themes that are struggles for us that kind of keep coming back, and all of those kind of things. It's important to recognize that not all suffering is like an earth-shattering, drama or something like that, and to see like how we approach it,
Yeah. Because sometimes I think in those sufferings that come in the course of life, sort of those maybe expected sufferings or things, we almost feel like, oh, well, it's just this, or it's just that. Well, this is normal. Everyone goes through this, whatever. And we can kind of write it off, instead of, like you're saying, Ignatius, to say, well, actually, this is difficult. And why is this difficult? Oh, I need to acknowledge and validate this thing that I'm going through, and maybe grieve it, or just be able to walk through it and not write it off as, because, oh, well, other people suffer more, or this. Like, all those things might be true, but that doesn't diminish the reality of a suffering that just happens in the course of life, right? So I think that's really that's really key.
Yeah. Also, for me, I actually find that the bigger challenges in my life, I'm actually not as afraid of, in a way. Like, I'm like, oh, it's coming, and like I kind of step up to the plate. But it's for me, it's like the everyday stuff that I'm more prone to lack courage in, to be honest. I think it's far more difficult for me to persevere every day through a long lasting pain that is not something other people know about, and it's not a big deal in quotes, but it's very painful and it's very difficult, and that is something I don't want to deal with. So I just that's my Netflix binge watching remedy for that. So it's actually, I think, and that's like kind of very Saint Therese like it's really those little rocks in your shoe that you constantly have that are sometimes the toughest to face and deal with, because it requires perseverance.
And to kind of go along with that, and what's apparently been a theme of my suffering, as I'm realizing I was talking about it today, is with the big things. It's like you have people you can talk to about that. That there's someone that you can call, and it's like, hey, I'm going through this right now. But when it comes to the literal things, it's like, is this worth giving them a call for? So there's a sense of like having to suffer alone when it comes to these ordinary things, which I think is important for us to overcome, and important for us to really defeat, because that's not true. I think that's a lie. You got to speak truth into that.
Totally. Even us, we found like with because we have a WhatsApp chat with, the three of us plus our secret prayer buddy who's in the background. And we've had to remind ourselves many times, actually, like post that in the group. Like, if you're feeling anxious today, if you're struggling with this, like, it's not just the big things, but it's like even just those little things, so that we can pray for each other, but it's also like trusting that actually somebody cares about me in my little things. Like, like in the littleness of my daily walk, or what's happening, that people actually care about that,
Yeah. My sister and I, this is so funny because I'm bringing the Raptors back in because they come in, you got to talk about them once every 3 weeks. But in last season, when we were facing Boston, it was a really tough series and we lost. But anyways, that whole thing, my sister and I would literally pray for the players. Like, we pray. I mean, you can't pray the outcome of the game. That's not, God doesn't play like with us that way, but we were praying for their souls, and we were just thinking, we're anxious about this game. And my sister said to me, like, there's nothing too big for God, but there's also nothing too small. We can literally bring everything to him. So, I love that. Thanks, Ignatius. I think that's so important.
That is so important.
We're heading into the end of our discussion and God wink time. Which is essentially, Ignatius, I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to any of our episodes yet, but we've, it's a time where we just talk about something humorous that God has done, or something, lovely that we've experienced with the Lord in the last couple of weeks. So, who wants to start? God winks.
I can start.
Okay.
So my God wink this week, because we just went into another lockdown here in Toronto this past week. And so on Sunday, I knew that this is going to be my last like mass and communion in however long. And I was just really feeling that, like really feeling the grief of that. And so anyways, but this week I just randomly gone into one of the churches to pray, and because they're keeping the churches open with, well, not I don't know about every church, but a couple of them around here are staying open with exposition of the Blessed Sacrament during what their normal mass times would be. And so I just went in to pray, and like 2 minutes into that, the priest came up to the front and was like, well, so if anyone here is sort of disposed to receive the Eucharist, or I'm going to just distribute communion. And so I was able to go up and receive communion. And it was just such an unexpected and random gift, and just felt like that reminder that God was like just, hey, it's all good. I'm here. And just,
Nice.
there's just a lot of joy in that. So.
Oh, that's
That's
awesome.
beautiful.
Yeah, I'm
that's
so
cool.
glad.
I can share. I'm just going to reach over here and grab my thing to show you. This is actually kind of right along the theme of little things, so I recently moved to Ottawa about a month ago now, and I've been kind of, I don't know, setting up my room and just putting things where they need to be. And I was like, I would really just love to have like a nice plant for my desk, but not a plant that I can kill, because I kill all things that are living. So I kept looking like at the dollar store just for their whatever anyways, and I haven't found anything that I liked. But then I was there the other day and I found this thing, and it was a whole big like ordeal about coming back to my house, and I had to take apart this other vase. I got the sticky stuff all over my hands to get these nice, anyways, it was just all to make this nice little plant arrangement. And it's just such a little thing, but it's super cute,
beautiful.
It's really pretty.
I love it.
And it makes me so, it's like this tiniest thing, but it just like makes me so happy when I look at it, because it's lovely and it's never going to die. And it's plastic, so I can wash it. So
That's great.
For those who are listening, it's just Erin has a beautiful vase, and then it's got like green leafy kind of things, and then purple flower,
Lavendery
lavender sticking up. It's beautiful, and it's plastic plants. Man, they last.
that's right. Yeah,
They don't die.
that's right.
True. That's awesome. I love that. Do you have a God wink, Ignatius?
Yeah, I do. So over the past few weeks, there's been a interesting development in my life in Nova Scotia, which is that the apartment that I was staying at while I was gone for Thanksgiving weekend ended up having some serious flooding issues, where a water main broke like right outside my unit apparently, and affected like 40 units across the whole apartment. So for a week or so, there was a lot of like construction and, like pulling up floors, trying to dry it out and stuff. And I received a notice at the end of the week, literally like 6 weeks ago now, that saying, hey, you got to get out of your apartment so we can fix it. So it's like, excellent. It's like, where am I going to go? They offered us an alternate unit, but like, I got to move all my furniture and all my stuff down. And it's it was stressful. It was stressful because it was, I'm being kicked out of my house.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of fear there. And then what just happened was everything just ended up working out so well. And it's just how the Lord continues to provide, which is amazing, because it turned out that first of all, there was this house that needed somebody to cat sit for them. So like that was available for me for a couple of weeks. So me and my roommate were able to go there and just have this like really nice place where we could stay and live. And then after they came back, right, like where I am right now, I'm at the house of a senior CCO staff member who's currently on paternal leave because he has a 4-month-old and a 2-year-old along with his 4 other children. And they live in like a fairly large rectory, and they offered a couple of their rooms to me and my roommate as well until our apartment can come back. So it's just how the Lord continues to provide for his people. And it also worked out doubly well because of the whole rent, because of the whole situation of my apartment. They're actually going to be waiving my rent for the month or so, which is
Great.
which is quite nice as well. So
That's awesome.
I'm really glad. I think the Lord has really been present in that.
That's
Cool.
amazing. My God wink has to do with school. I had a very busy week of like presentations and stuff like that. And I thought, so it was like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, seminars that I was giving. And then, so on Wednesday night, I was like, oh man, I have to work on my presentation for tomorrow at 11 and I'm going to be up like so late. And I go to my computer. I'd been planning this for like a while because I knew it was coming. I go into my computer, get ready to present. And I'm like, hold on. That's next Thursday. I get a night off.
Wow.
And it was the best feeling ever. You know that feeling when you're like, I have so much to do. And you're like, I don't, though.
Yeah.
It was so good. So thank you, Lord. That was lovely.
Oh, the lives of students.
Yeah.
So good.
That's right. Right. So, I mean, God is with us in little and big things in all of it. And we're so grateful. Thank you, Ignatius, for sharing.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been so good. And, you know, despite all of our technology, whatever, I think, you know, there's so much wisdom that God has shared, you know, or given us, I think, through this conversation, at least for me, for sure. So yeah. All right. God bless everybody. We'll see you, or you'll hear us next Monday.
Yay. Bye.
Yay! Happy Advent.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of In the Thicket. If you like what you hear, give us a rating and hit that subscribe button. We have new episodes every Monday with more stories and honest conversations about life when the going gets rough and the hope and humor amidst it all. We'd love for you to join our community on Instagram and Facebook at In the Thicket Podcast. While you're there, let us know how we can pray for you. God bless and see you next week.